Okay, good morning. We are at Hilchos Treifos, Siman Lametet, Hilchos Reah, by the Lam. So we're in Seif Kaf Bet. Seif Kaf Bet. So until now we've been discussing Sirchas on the back of the Una, that's one of the top 5 lobes. Now we're going to get to the bottom 2, one right and left, of the Uma, the large lower lobes. Ima Uma Srucha Ladofan. If the Uma has a sircha to the back, or to the rib cage, from the back of the Uma to the rib cage, to the dofan. All right, we explained that yesterday. Im yesh maka bedofan. So now it depends. If the Uma is a little bit more difficult category, more strict category than the Una. Here, the Uma, it's the Srucha is going to be kosher if there's a Maka on the Dofan, in the rib cage. Imesh Maka b'Dofan Kshera, because then we're saying the Dofan had the injury or a broken rib or whatever it is, and that caused the Sircha to appear on the lung. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a hole. The Einat Sricha Bedika, and you don't have to check it. There's nothing, you don't blow it up, you don't peel off the sircha, it's fine. It's on the back of there's a maka, and then it's fine. You don't have to do anything more than that. V'im ein maka bedofan treifa. And if there is no maka, then it's a treifa, because we're talking about the uma, the lower or caudal lobes, not the unos. For the unos, without a maka, you do a bedika. You can try and peel it off and do a bedika, as we discussed earlier. So here, no maka by the uma, velo mahani bedika. Doing a bedika won't help you. Okay.
The sircha originated from the
dofan as opposed to the reya. I believe that's correct. Maybe there's other interpretations. I don't know. V'davka b'srucha ladofan machshirim al yedei maka. Now, so the only way a sircha is going to be okay on the uma if it happened through a maka. Aval im sircha l'shar mekomot. Now, this really, we learned this before. If you have a sircha from anywhere on the lung, front, back, whatever, dorsal, ventral, to any place in that cavity, so then it's going to be a treifa. L'shar mekomos, kagon, chazeh, if it goes to the area of the sternum. V'gargeret, if it goes to the windpipe, trachea. V'shamnuni talev, or if the sircha goes from the lung to the fat that's sitting on top of the heart. V'tarpash, or to the diaphragm. You have a sircha that goes from the lobe, one of the lobes to the diaphragm. Any of these situations, alpha pisheshba maka, even though there is a maka, it's a treifa. Okay. V'lo mahani bedika, and doing a bedika is not going to help you anything. Okay. Kaf Gimel. Maka zu she'amru haynu sheyesh bedofan ke'ein nega. So, okay. Now.
Is this the first time we encounter this idea that v'lo mahani bedika?
But we've seen it before. It depends on the case. Okay. So having a maka on the dofan, it has to be ke'ein nega. It has to be something that's looks like there was an injury, right? We're talking about a case over here when we see a sign, I don't know, bruising, a maka, a sign of on the behema, on the dofan, that there was a maka. So then we can assume that was a maka, and we can be meko. If you know that there was a maka, right? This is in the Gilyon, Maharsha, and others. If oh no, that's something else. I see this. If you know for sure that there was a maka, it's funny. Where did I see this? I saw this on my Otzer Mefarshim on Tosefet Meruba. Okay, whatever. If you know for sure there was a maka, you saw something happen, and then the hematoma, the bruising, healed completely, and you remember where it was, so then that's good enough. because there was a makkah. Here in Kaf Gimel, we don't know if there was a makkah. So you're looking at where the sircha is, and you're looking at the rib cage, and you're saying, oh, I see there was a makkah. Ke'ein managa. There was an injury. But if there's just these black blotches, bilvad, that doesn't happen from getting an injury. Right? I guess people have to know their animals. If you're in the business, you know what looks like an injury and what doesn't look like an injury. V'im mishbar atzela, and so too, if you know that one of the ribs were broken, afal pishachazer v'nikshar karinan bei shapir maka. Even though it's healed 100%, but you know where it happened, that's called a makkah because there was a makkah. Right? You only need a sign of a makkah if you don't know that there was a makkah. Once you know there was a makkah, then okay, and then that's what caused the sircha, and then it's kshera if it's on the back of the uma or una, on back on the lungs. Okay. Kaf dalet. Im kol area devuka ladofan. Now here's you have the entire lung is attached to the rib cage in the back to the dofan. So then, imin makkah bedofan treifa. If there's no makkah, it's a treifa. V'lo mahane la v'dika, and it's not going to help to do any kind of blowing up. Afilu im devuka kula below shum pilush. Even if it's 100% attached, the entire surface of the lung is attached, and there's no space in between. It doesn't matter. And so much so, v'yeshmi shekatav shehamatira bar nidoihu v'hakelim asurim. That if a person, if a shochet, a bodek, is matir such a case, so we should put him in nidoy, and all the kalim that it used are also a treifa, because it's 100% iser. Okay.
Is there nothing to be made from or not?
Oh, how?
Okay,
Yes, I don't think so. Okay, kaf hey. Let's see, where do we leave? Okay, let me finish this. So now, again, we kind of had this idea before. It's not, a sircha is often not just one little thin string, but it's more of a fascia, more of a sheet, of a membrane or adhesion. So now you can have the sircha, part of it is coming from the back of the uma, and part of it is coming from the una. So then, if it becomes one, it's one sircha really attached to both parts of both lobes, and it becomes one, or it is one, and it goes to the dofan, it goes to the to the rib cage. And remember, we learned this means to the muscle on the rib cage, to the dofan. If most of the una is most of the sircha, right? You see how thick it is. If most of it's attached to the una versus the uma, then it's going to be a kshera, right? That's the halachas of una. V'im ruba meha uma, treifa, imein maka bedofan. And if most of the sircha is attached to the uma versus the una, so then it depends. If there's a maka, it's kshera. If there's no maka, it's a treifa, right? Halachas of the uma. We just had this. V'chein una asrucha b'sircha achas lechazeh. If you have a sircha going from the una to the chazeh, to the breast bone, to the sternum area, anywhere along and between the two arteries, one on each side. Ula dofan, or it goes to the dofan. Azlinan batar ruba. So part of the sircha goes to the sternum, and part of it goes to the dofan. So again, all these halachos, so you go after the majority of the sircha. Where does most of it attach to? And again, so now you have it going from the uma, and part of it has the makkah, part of it doesn't. So it depends. Im ruba memaka kshira, most of it is on the makkah area, right? You see the hematoma or whatever it is in the animals. So then it's a kshira, v'im lav treifa, but if it's not, it's a treifa. So too, if you have part of the sircha going to the diaphragm, ula maka shebedofan, and part of it's going onto the dofan where there's a maka. Im ruba b'maka shebedofan kshira. If most of it's going to the Maka part of the dofan, so then it's a kshera, v'im lav, treifa, and if not, it's a treifa. Again, this is just a quick review of everything we already learned, and the point is, you just go after the rove of the sircha, and then that'll give the halacha for the entire sircha. That's koveya. Haga, reya shanim tzalea kamo chelev kisui v'hu basar baloi. So what happens is you can have on the reya, on the lung, that the membrane. Again, I haven't seen this. I asked Rabban David; he hasn't seen this either. It basically just means you have a thicker membrane, so it looks a little bit like fat, extra thicker membrane on top of the reya, and underneath it, the meat, the flesh of the lung looks a little bit decayed. So, kofin oto mehalea, the halacha is you peel it off, like we're allowed to do, without doing miyuch, unless you hold that's okay. So anyways, you remove it, you peel it off, me'alea, and then, v'im hareya tachtav shalim v'yafe kasher. If you check it, the reya looks okay underneath it, like it looks like it's shalim. But mihu, this continues, tzarich livdok hareya beneficha. But here you have a reyus, you have a problem. So kuli alma, this is meant stressed or noted by the Kaf HaChaim, that everyone holds that you have to do a bedika through blowing it. What does that mean? After you peel it off, you put water over that area, or you dunk it in a bucket, and you blow, and you see if there's a hole or not. Kind of to how we learned earlier about removing sirchas. Really, it's just the same thing, the same halachas of a sircha. And here he says, once you find this situation, now midin, you have to do it. You have to check it beneficha by blowing, and even b'diavad, if you don't check it, because now you have a reyus, you have a problem, right? So anyways, we'd have a din here. Here you would have to check it before eating it. And what else did I want to say? Okay, now if you remove it, it's mentioned in the Be'er Heitev, if it's got little wrinkles, looks a little shriveled, that's not a problem. It's same thing with the crazy uplesi. It's 100% mutter. He has an interesting case. You have on the back of it, it's all shalem basically, the lung, but you have like an extra sedek or a break or a separation chituch in the back of the lung, and that's.
Does that create an extra una or not?
Okay, and he says you see opposite it, no, so it depends about creating an extra uma. Could be. Right, and so that's also an issue between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. And here he says, if you see that the rib cage broke over there and it healed, then that's a problem. Okay. Now, this is something I wanted to bring up. At the end of the Be'er Heitev, he quotes a tshuva of the Radbaz. Very interesting, perhaps. So he says, okay, sometimes there are people who are machmer and they won't eat any food if they don't do a bedika by blowing it up. Now, nowadays they always blow it up, as far as I know. But he says, let's say you're a person who always blows up the lung before you eat it, to check it. And you're invited to eat at someone else's house who doesn't blow up the lung, because the halacha is you don't have to. So the first one was more machmer, he accepted upon himself, and the other one was just normal. So he says, he asks, can you use the kalim? So you can't eat his meat that he didn't blow up, because that's your personal chumrah. But the question is, can you use the dishes? So he says you're allowed to 100% use the dishes of your friend. Ein tzarich lachush ge'ulei kelim.
He says, "Mi she'eino ochel mimefucha, shenetarach b'bayit."
Oh, okay, you're right. I misread it. Fine. In other words, an afucha is a case when it became a shaila on the food, and you had to blow it up in order to check that there's no nekev. In other words, you remove the sircha, let's say. You're right. You remove the sircha, and then, now the only way it's going to be kosher is if you blow it up. So if you're a person who never eats blown up lungs, because there was a shaila on it, that's your personal chumrah, and now you're invited to eat someone else. Here in this case, you would call it chalak beit Yosef, perhaps. your friend is still chalak, but you're even more than chalak because they do an eficha and you don't. So he says you're still allowed to use his kalim that are, I'm assuming, not b'nei yoman, and it's not a problem. Okay, for what that's worth, again, a lot could be said on it. I'm just trying to be a little objective here, and I just want to point out that interesting question comes up.
Is it not b'nei Yoman?
I'm assuming it's not a b'nei yoman. I'm assuming that's the case, but you'd have to look it up inside. Right? Because b'nei yoman is 100%. There's no isser of blias from one to another midaraisa. It's only midarabanan. And we're going to get to that later. But midarabanan we're machmer, but b'diavad, the halach is clear. We're mekel in general. B'nei yoman if it was used. Okay, so the question is, a person has a family member or a friend or whatever you're invited over, and you always eat glat beit yosef, or just glat, whatever, halak, glat, kosher, and but that's glat, whatever, and you and your friend has a regular kasher, regular rabbanut. So I'll just point. So it's a similar question. In Israel, you have kasher rabbanut, and in America or other places around the world, I would just simply say any reliable kashrus agency that is on the standard of kasher and not glat. So what can you do? So can you eat there? So I'm just going to share, and I've seen it by Yabi Omer, and Suryo has a sefer, but I did not do a survey over here, but I'll just share with you in Yabi Omer. So he writes, in order not l'chadchila, you should only buy chalak. Now remember, Rabbi Omer is Rav Avadi Yosef, who's Sephardic, and he would say, no Sephardi is allowed to eat anything but chalak. The Ashkenazim are the ones who say, the minhag of Ashkenaz is really you're allowed to have through mi'uch, which is what's regular kasher. But generally, all Ashkenazim, generally speaking, they try to be machmer. Generally, the rabbis among all Ashkenazi communities would generally say you should only eat glat. Again, there's a couple reasons. Sometimes there's other halachas involved. But anyways, that's the general. So Rav Yosef, who's Sephardic, says, in order not to embarrass your friend and to make problems, he says you can go there, don't ask. Just obviously you have to know that he keeps kosher. Right? Otherwise, it's a whole other story. But if a person keeps kosher, but he only eats, or you suspect he only eats kasher, again, sometimes he'll end up buying whatever is available. But so he says, you're allowed to eat the food, you don't even have to ask, and probably better if you don't ask. And then he puts it down as a sveika, because maybe the halacha is like the Ramah, that you are, the Mekel opinion in the Ramah, that you are allowed to do mi'uch. And then they check it. So it's 100%. And that's what most of the Jews relied upon for hundreds of years. Okay, so maybe the halacha is like them. And then perhaps, even if the halacha is not like them, who's to say the meat that you're having is through mi'uch? There's all kinds of reasons why the meat ends up in there. And it's similar to a case of nevda. So I don't know if you need to go on to the sveika, but he presents it as sveika and nevda. And so according to the halacha for Svardim, that becomes 100% kosher. And so for Ashkenazim, it's even more mekel, we learn, right? How it could be.
You have the marker for that?
I forgot. It's easy to look. I think it's in Chela Gimel or Hey. It's one of the earlier 6. Yeah, it's easy to find, sorry. So, anyways, and then he says, Kol Shekain, this is what triggered it to me, and Kol Shekain, it's the Kalim are for sure not a problem. But he says, really, don't embarrass your friends and make issues, you're allowed to. Again, if you ask your Rav, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different take on it, and different opinions on how to classify kasher. But again, these are all, if it's kasher rabbanut or a reliable agency, we're always dealing with, generally speaking, the majority in Rubo Kakulo, they're all Yerei Shemayim and Eid Echad Ne'aman B'Yisurin. Again, there's always some variables, but that's just...
Any difference regarding chicken? Or it's the same?
No, same thing. Okay. I think we're finished with that one. We'll start the Reya. Let's start with the Reya. And yeah, sorry. Let's start with Siman Mem, and then I don't think we'll finish. Siman Mem. Dine Treifos Halev. Siman Mem. So now we're finished with the lung. Let's start the heart. Okay, well, at least we'll begin. Now, just when you see the Gemara or different, Rishonim or whatever, you're going to poskim, you're going to see that sometimes the heart will be defined as having 2, 3, or 4 cavities or chambers, just depending how you quantify it and how it's cut. But let's read the words of the Shulchan Aruch. Halev yeshbo gimel chalalim. There's 4 chambers in the heart. Nikev echad mehem treifa. If any one of them have a hole, it becomes a treifa. Ve'afilu im halev chelev tarpash halev sotimo. Even if the outside fat seals it up. Tarpash halev, yeah, this is outside the pericardium. It seals it up. Right. Now the tarpash halev, chelev tarpash halev sotimo. So there's fat. The heart, around the heart has this sac. It's called pericardium. And there's fat inside the pericardium and fat outside the pericardium. So again, there's a couple different explanations in the Rishonim, but basically that'll make it more, I think it'll be easier just to follow that. So you have fat on the outside of the pericardium, and even if that's going to rest on it, it doesn't help. Because the fat that's on outside the pericardium, it's loose. It's a little bit, it like rests on it, but it's not stuck onto it. Okay? Expression, it's like a hat. I don't know. You wear a hat, but it's not permanent. It rests on your head. Okay, so im chelev tarpash halev sotimo. Even if that happens, it doesn't help you. But if you have a hole in the heart, aval im shuman halev atzmo sotimo kasher. But the shuman over here is inside the pericardium. Because that's stuck and that's more tight onto it. Okay. Haga, v'yesh omrim delo mahane stimat shuman halev. And some say it doesn't even help. Okay? V'yesh lachush, as we see in the end of this siman, you're going to see in Vav, v'yesh lachush lidverim. And you can be made, and one should be machmer for them. So in other words, it doesn't matter if there's a hole in the heart. It makes it a treifa. It doesn't matter if there's shuman inside or outside, but it does matter because, and the Kaf HaChaim writes, but if it's hefsed meruba, in other words, ish lachush divrehim, he agrees. But for hefsed meruba, there is what to rely on. Okay, I think we'll stop. I'm just going to end up with one little line that we mentioned from the before halacha, is that, again, when it comes to halacha, we never bend halacha for convenience, but sometimes we do bend chumras for the sake of peace and darchei noam.